And our special guest tonight, Michael Tellinger, as we talk about just how we evolved and some structures on this planet. You know, we're talking about the work of Zecharia Sitchin and his theories of the 12th planet. Of course, we'll talk a little bit with Michael about that, too. But a lot of people have devoted many careers to investigating this phenomenon as well. Robert Saffier does a very thorough job trying to coordinate all the various people who are talking about this. And it's growing, I think. It's growing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The more we look at the different race groups on planet Earth. You know, we call ourselves the human race, but we're not one race. We're distinctly several different race groups. And that becomes very interesting and often a very sensitive subject, but something that needs to be discussed openly without, racial prejudice and so forth. So it becomes more and more compelling. The evidence becomes overwhelming that we are a species that has ended on this planet by some default or premeditated action, and that we did not really evolve to this point in time. We somehow were manipulated into this point in time.
For a specific reason, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
Some evolutionists, Michael, would say, George, don't use the word popped up. We evolved, yet it's pretty convincing that we kind of just showed up all of a sudden, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not just convincing. This is what I deal with almost on a daily basis now, discovering these ancient structures here in South Africa. Because, we've been promoting the concept of cradle of humankind here in South Africa, and it's a very strong selling point for the tourists to come here, because this is where supposedly the first humans either appeared or evolved or whatever you want to call it. And there's overwhelming evidence for that, for the first humans to have appeared here in Southern Africa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and this part of the world. And yet there's very little evidence of these first humans. So we did pop up. And the other important thing is that people get confused all the time is this cradle of humankind that is being sold to the world doesn't have any human skeletons in it. We have hominids in there, Australopithecus africanus and Mrs. Bless and Littlefoot, and wonderful examples of over 500 fossils that have been excavated from the Sterkfontein caves, just sort of northwest of Johannesburg. Over 500 fossils, if I've got it right, but they're all hominids, no human skeletons there. So these are all the supposedly pre-human evolutionary states. They are not human. And that's why I find it so important that we start finding these human settlements and human-built structures that indicate the presence of early Homo sapiens in Southern Africa, and I think we've just stumbled upon them. I'm extremely excited about the work we're doing here right now. It's going to really send shockwaves through the archaeological and historical fields in the world, because no one has been expecting it, and here it is. It just suddenly arrived. It's been here all the time. It's been here for years and years, and it's just been shunned and shoved aside as recently built stone settlements by the Bantu people when they first made the move down into southern Africa from northwest and East Africa in the 1300s. Remember, the Bantu people, the black Africans, only arrived in southern Africa from about the 1300s. Prior to that, there were no Bantu or black Africans in southern Africa. There were other Homo sapiens here, like the Khoisan people and the what we call the Strandlopers, and there were the Boskopoid people here, which I'll talk about a bit later, that are recently unearthed in a place called Boskop, that are between 10 and 30,000 years old and possibly older. And this has become a very hot political debate in South Africa, because some people believe that you've become a racist and you're drawing racial lines here, and it's got nothing to do with that. You've got to call it what it is. You've got to call it as you find it. You can't start becoming politically sensitive to one group or another.
No, this is anthropology, for crying out loud.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when they discover the mummies, the Aryan mummies in China, well, were they going to say, well, we discovered mummies in China, but we can't tell you what race they were, Come on.
You know what fascinates me, Michael, about, and I want to talk with you a little bit about Zecharia Sitchin's work to see if you're familiar with that. And then next hour we'll devote the time to this incredible structure here that we're talking about. But what fascinates me on this planet is the diverse, many different races we have here. Is it because of environment and locale, or are these all, I've always thought about this, are these all various sex races from other extraterrestrials that have been here, and they've manipulated in their own image? So the Asian person, the Caucasian, the African, they are in the image of the extraterrestrial that came to this planet a long time ago. Have you ever thought of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, you obviously give this stuff a great deal of thought, and I think you put your finger right on the button one more time. Again, I look at this scientifically, genetically, and ecologically. If we only appeared as a species 250,000 years ago, not enough time has passed for these different race groups to have evolved. And I don't care what kind of scientific evidence anybody throws at you, it's just not going to happen, because the strength of the genetic pool that keeps the Asian person Asian is so strong that it defies any kind of argument or scientific or a genetic evolution into that. It just doesn't make any sense. And the same goes with African people. The strength of the gene pool of African defies the movement away from that into somebody like me who's got a little pale skin and gets burnt when I run into the sun.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, and there's not enough time that has passed on Earth for us to have evolved so dramatically into these 3 or 4 distinctly different race groups. And that's why when I said earlier we call ourselves the human race, well, we're not really the human race, because we are not one race group. We are 3 or 4, possibly more, distinctly different race groups. But the obvious ones are the Caucasians, the Asians, the Chinese. I suppose when I say Asian, I mean the Chinese type look, and then the Black African, and that is fascinating stuff, because it becomes a melting pot of debate. What is interesting is earlier this year, I think it was in February, Craig Venter, the so-called father of the Human Genome Project, gave a speech which blew everyone's mind, and it certainly blew my mind, because he mentioned some startling facts. Until very recently, we were all sold the story that all humans are 99.9% genetically the same,
right,
identical. Well, that is no longer the case. Okay, with the Human Genome Project studies, they found out that between people and especially different race groups, there is up to a 2 or a 3% difference in their genetic structure.
And that's a big difference, isn't it?
It's a huge difference. And now suddenly you go, oh, okay. Now I understand. But it becomes even more interesting when you start looking at different race groups. The way different race groups respond to environmental factors like malaria and other disease, the way race groups respond to medicine and medication, shows as much as a 15% genetic difference in their response to these external factors. So that broadens the genetic difference even more.
It's almost, Michael, as if they all came from different places in the universe.
That's certainly what it seems like. It seems like there might have been a prototype kind of person built here, and then another group by one group of extraterrestrial settlers for a specific purpose. And by that I mean, in my previous book, Slave Species of God, and the work that Zecharia Sitchin has done, the cloning of the humans by the Anunnaki. Many of your listeners I'll be very familiar with that. That seems to be a specific point in time, and possibly with some of the earliest human manipulation or manipulation of this new species called Homo sapien. And yet there is another theory or belief structure that says that there were advanced humans on planet Earth, the Lemurians and then later the Atlanteans, who were quite advanced and who were settled on this planet, living a completely different kind of lifestyle that was then infiltrated and completely overturned by these extraterrestrials.
That's an interesting theory, too. More to come, Michael, when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM.